Good evening. I'm calling to order the budget public hearing for fiscal year 2026. Meeting to order on this May the 6th, 2025. We have all the commissioners present. I believe the agenda is approved, and so we're going to go straight into the public hearing. So opening that and then passing over to Mr. Johnson to start walking us through.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have before you the updated materials from the proposed budget. We'll focus primarily on the general fund, although I will say we're presenting balanced budgets for all funds available. In the general fund, we are looking at a little over a 3% increase over last year. We did budget this year with a tax rollback in mind, so that was a direction from the board early on to try to continue to keep taxes as low as possible. So we have worked towards that. Obviously, you'll set the millage rate at a separate date, but one goes in hand with the other. We're certainly working towards trying to give another rollback if that's prudent at that time. You will see that we have gone through our work sessions. I do want to give kudos to the staff and the elected officials. We did ask for no growth in this year's budget. And they actually came in a little less than last year's budget. And then through the budget process, after we looked at all the revenues and we looked at what our sales tax revenue was going to be, we did end up with that little over 3% growth total in the general fund budget. You will see that there are some deferred reclassifications. Again, that's because we told people originally that we weren't going to do any reclassifications or promotions this year, so we have added some of those in. You can see some specific things that have been added since our last meeting. And I'm glad to talk about any of those in particular. We do have a COLA budgeted in this year's budget. We are looking at on-call pay for our coroner staff. That was a request from the coroner. Superior Court judge's retirement supplement is there as well. And then some capital adjustments. We actually moved some things out of the general fund budget to pay for them other ways with other capital funds. So we have taken care of all those and made those changes as necessary. A couple of other operating adjustments I just want to bring to your attention. We do have a small increase for the Development Authority in their request. We do have the Development Authority bond payment. We have worked very hard renegotiating our contract. We have a one-year contract with Gold Cross that will actually be voted on tonight. We had to budget for that amount. That's an additional $600,000 in supplement. We feel like that's prudent and necessary for their operations as they continue to provide our ambulance service on our behalf. We did have a couple of issues with ARPA positions that were running out, so we worked with elected officials to get that done. And then you'll notice that there's an increase to the library budget. This is an update in the amount of $300,000. Now, this has nothing to do with any sort of library operations. As a matter of fact, it's the same amount as last year's library. It's just the way that Ms. Reese accounts for this. Historically, what we have done is we have budgeted for the library in the amount of about $2.8 million, I believe, $2.8 million. And then at the end of the year, we would make a transfer over to the state portion if we needed to make a transfer. This year, what we're doing is we're budgeting the full amount of the library in the general fund. And if we underspend this, then obviously it'll just stay in the general fund. It'll show as a savings. So instead, it's really an accounting moving of the money. Anything you want to add about that, Leanne?
No, that's good.
Okay. So you'll see that $300,000 there. This is not, I know there's been a lot of discussion about what we're doing with the library. This is not planning to change any operations or anything like that. This is not any additional funding, costing taxpayers additional money. This is the same amount of money essentially they were faced with last year. We're just moving that around. And then of course you have some transfers there. Overall, we have a strong fund balance here. Strong contingency here rather, about 2.7%. We typically aim for 2.5%. We do have a couple of adjustments that we need to make. I believe still they will be very small adjustments. I don't see those being very high at all, but we will make sure that we bring those to your attention. Obviously, as we move through the budget process, we will have to advertise the budget, I believe, on the 16th of May. So those adjustments will need to be made in the next week or so. So we're in the process of making those, and we'll make sure that we note those for your final budget adoption that you will have after we advertise the budget. Any questions on that before we talk about the digest projection?
Talk about the difference in stormwater.
Difference in stormwater. Let me get down there
On
to
the
that.
Fund, I saw that too. It's on the very last.
Yep, let me pull it up.
Flipping pages.
No problem. Just let me get to the right one here.
The summary of proposed budgets. page.
Yeah, so you're showing a significant increase in the stormwater utility fund. Say that.
I believe that's just expected project money, infrastructure projects that they have going on next year.
It is.
Yeah.
Pulling money out of the fund balance for stormwater and putting it into their budget for proposed projects that we're gonna do this year.
Is that the same thing with the 2021 ARPA funds? That's pulling it out of, there was a,
Right, those are the funds that we've already received, and they
Right.
have to be spent by the end of 2026.
it's ending and, yeah.
So we're now budgeting for those, that's correct.
And I think that's primarily the sewer project
Yes,
going on with Stacy.
yes.
Budgeting the lost. What percent are we using, what are we projecting?
We're actually using a 5% growth in the loss. That is based on historic averages, and I believe we may even have yeah, we do have that local option sales tax collection history there. You can see the history going all the way back to 2022 and see that increase. So I think 5% is probably a conservative estimate. I believe it's probably going to come in a little bit higher than that, but we're going with 5%. Same on the growth in the digest. We did anticipate a 5% growth in the digest. I anticipate the growth in the digest will probably be a little bit higher than 5%. But if we are budgeting for a rollback, then obviously we didn't want to be too aggressive on the growth in the digest because one will cancel the other out. Any additional growth over 5% will be canceled out by the rollback.
Net millage is 4.568.
Yes, sir.
That's the current millage before.
That's the
rollback.
current millage rate. That is correct. That is correct. You will notice, though, that we have already looked at the projected budget for the bonds and well, I guess just the bonds. We've already calculated the amount of money that we'll need for that. So you can see that there is a slight decrease in the bonds already. So there will already be a slight decrease on the tax bill due to the growth in the digest. We won't need to levy as much millage for those outstanding bonds. And just to let you know, those bonds, when we started, they were at a full mill, and now we're down significantly lower than that. Fire department stays the same. Their net millage stays the same, and the growth in the digest is enough to be able to handle the growth in the fire department without us adjusting that millage up or down.
On the IPT fund
Yes.
insurance, there was legislation, or early discussion of the General Assembly doing away with that.
That's correct. So that legislation wasn't dropped this year. It's been discussed as a potential for next year, redoing the insurance premium tax fund, or maybe not even collecting that. For us, that's $12.5 million. We would have to find another way to absorb that. I think you'll hear local governments statewide probably object to that, because essentially what that's going to do is that's going to, we're going to have to find the $12 million somewhere. So we're either going to have to raise taxes, or we're going to have to cut it from something else to make that work.
Any other questions, comments? Jump to the budget calendar real quickly.
Sure. So you can see we're here at the budget hearing now on 5/6. We're going to advertise the proposed budget, the newspaper as required by law, on the 16th. And then we will have the budget adoption at our Board of Commissioners meeting on June the 3rd, the first meeting in June, and of course, it'll take place, or take effect, July 1. I do want to add, Mr. Chairman, that I do still want to give kudos to the staff and the elected officials and this Board of Commissioners and everybody that worked through this budget process this year. It seems like it's been a longer process. However, we worked hard. I think everybody tightened their belt. Your budget memo said come in at or below what you had last year, and that's what people did. So we were able to use that as a starting point, and when we added revenues in, we were able to make some necessary, decisions regarding growth in the county. But it's far from being extravagant. I think everybody did exactly what you asked and tightened their belt.
A projected rollback rate,
We don't know what that number is yet. We're gonna have to see the digest number before we can give you that number.
any other questions? Comments from staff? Well, I do appreciate it. We asked you to start with this row up and digest, and hopefully that is elected officials, the constitutional officers, they all joined in and very sensitive to their request for any changes. Any other questions or comments? Well, this meeting is hearing is gonna stand adjourned at 5:42, and of course, we'll reconvene for the commission.